Story 1. In college, a friend of mine during a debate said, "We need to ask two questions. What do we want? And how do we get there?" It is very simple, but seeing those as two separate questions changed how I approach nearly everything. Too often, people just ask, "What's next?" Or, "How do I fix this?" without having a clear goal in mind. Know your goal, then make a plan. Story 2. You can have 1,000 problems in life until you have a health problem. Then you have just one problem. Story 3. Gravestones. Particularly those that you know no one visits or the people who remembered them are also gone. I had that revelation at my cousin's funeral while looking around the graveyard. One day we are here and one day we won't be. I chose to be less reserved and more outgoing, and to take care of myself more. It has been a fun revelation, actually. Story 4. Being involved in a car accident during rush hour, and no one stopping to help. I had to call emergency services myself after I came to. It has been 20 years, and I still work to be a better person than all those individuals, although it does not take much when that is the standard. Story 5. Someone I didn't know handed me a $10 gift card for a well-known coffee shop in a subway station in Los Angeles. It was just a random act of kindness or a marketing campaign or something. At the time, I thought the coffee shop was completely overrated. This was in the early 2000s when people were obsessed with it. So I gave the card to my favorite coworker without any thought, offhandedly joking with "Happy unbirthday." Later that day, I found her crying. Long story short, I learned that she had always wanted to try the coffee shop but couldn't afford it. She was overwhelmed because she had printed out the menu and felt paralyzed by all the choices. She also didn't want to use the gift card too quickly. My world was changed that day in so many ways. I can't even explain. I'll never forget how humbled, ashamed, and mortified I felt all at once. It was a huge wake-up call about how privileged and ungrateful I had become. I also ended up taking her to the coffee shop every Friday and treating her for almost 5 years. She's in a much better financial position now, and we've both moved on to other jobs, but we're still great friends. I now work in project management at a philanthropic organization and volunteer my spare time for great causes. All because a stranger handed me a gift card at Hollywood and Vine 22 years ago. Story 6. The recognition that crime, especially ordinary crimes like theft and drug dealing, almost always comes from a place of desperation, not greed. When there are no jobs to be had, food assistance does not buy diapers, and someone says all you have to do is move some cocaine and suddenly your food is paid for and your rent is up to date. When pushed far enough, that crime turns into a lifeline. It changed my entire outlook on crime and punishment. From criminals are villains who should be punished to criminals are desperate people who need help. We need fewer police and prisons, and more community improvements. More education, better schools, more opportunities. Crime is a failure of society, not the individual. Story 7. Humility. As a teenager, I have learned that boasting about your success almost all the time is not a virtue to be sought after. Story 8. Someone mentioned in a casual conversation that the United States is already a post-apocalyptic society. Native Americans have been living in a post-apocalyptic world for the past 400 years. Story 9. I was told I was intimidating and gave people unpleasant looks. Basically, I had a resting face. I used to think it was good, like, "Forget you all, prove yourself to me." My boyfriend's sister at the time told me that she thought I would be very unkind when she first met me because I gave her a disapproving look, the kind that Miranda Priestley gives, but that I am actually really nice and sweet. It shifted my mindset on how I present myself and meet people. I want to be warm and welcoming. I do not want to seem unfriendly. It changed everything and really opened doors for me. Story 10. I heard someone say, "When you meet someone, treat them as if they were in serious trouble, and you will be right more than half the time." That short sentence changed the way I see the world. Story 11. Looking at a bird feather under a microscope, I observed that birds have small hooks called barbules that strengthen their feathers, working like Velcro. I see birds every day, multiple times a day, but seeing that made me realize how little I know about the elements that make up our wonderful world. Story 12. As a child, I found a blade of grass pushing up out of a freshly paved asphalt driveway. Now, think about the heat, the petroleum, and the hardness of the asphalt. I learned respect for Mother Nature that day. Story 13. An interaction I had when I was 12 involved hanging out with people I should not have. I was offered heroin. At that time, I was into drinking and smoking cannabis and was already tipsy, but I turned it down. I could have easily become addicted, and my life could have been completely different. I did not think twice about that interaction until I became an adult. I now understand how important those little decisions can be in the trajectory of life, and I will always be conscious of that from now on. Story 14. My mood stabilizers. A tiny pill that makes me go from someone who enjoys other people's pain to someone who will help stop that pain whenever possible. Story 15. Hanlon's razor states, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. This concept suggests that most people who engage in harmful behavior are likely less evil than they are merely foolish. Story 16. I love my parents, but there have been many times when I don't like them at all. Getting older has helped develop a better relationship with them, but once I saw this in a TikTok comment, of all places, I cried and called my parents the next day to check in and let them know how much I love them. We're all on this floating rock trying our best. We're gonna mess up, we're gonna upset people, but we're all just trying to stay alive. Give people the same amount of grace you expect them to give you. Story 17. Reading, especially reading outside of social media, cannot be emphasized enough. People often do not understand or believe how reading rewires the brain. Your dialogue improves, and you understand things in detail rather than just in headlines. However, we live in a technologically addictive era, so people do not read as much. Literacy rates among youth are suffering compared to just a decade ago, which causes various problems. Story 18. My old boss said, always look up when out walking. You have no idea what you are missing. And he was right. You see so much more than by being face down, stuck looking at a phone. Story 19. Learning the power of eye contact. With your peers, it shows confidence and respect. To others less fortunate, it gives them at least a moment of dignity. I was told by a homeless person that not being looked in the eyes was harder on him than being told no when asking for money. Story 20. My mental health was at its lowest during my first couple of years of college. Long story short, I was isolated, food and sleep deprived, and under immense pressure from my family. I was watching a let's play of some multiplayer racing game and listening to the content creators rant. One of them said something that just realigned my brain. It doesn't matter what you're doing if you're truly miserable. And it was true. I was so incredibly miserable. I hated my college, my dorm, my roommates, and my part-time job. All of it made me miserable, but I was clinging to it because my family said it was important. It wasn't. It was killing me. I transferred colleges, went back to my home state, and spent the last 10+ years trying to put myself back together. Story 21. Growing up in an integrated working-class inner-city neighborhood, I had no control over where I lived as a child. Living in a community where everyone pretty much lived paycheck to paycheck and having childhood friends of different backgrounds made me see the world very differently than most white guys my age. Story 22. Switching to a better pillow. I never realized how much quality sleep I was missing out on until I made the change. Story 23. I live in an area that is on about a 10% to 15% incline. It doesn't seem like much until you walk down about 6 blocks and look back thinking, man, now I have to carry groceries 1 mile uphill. For me, a healthy, able-bodied person, it is annoying but not challenging. But every morning when I walk down to the donut shop, I realize how much that incline probably is difficult for anyone with mobility issues. Imagine if you are in a wheelchair or like I have seen some homeless people with bad feet or difficulty walking. Once that incline gets icy in the wintertime, I have to wear metal cleat shoes to help prevent me from falling down. For someone in a wheelchair or with mobility issues when it is icy, that incline is basically a death trap. I also realized recently how much of the world around me is built for people like me. Kitchen counter heights, doorknobs, narrow hallways, or elevators. As an able-bodied person, I take most of that for granted. If you are in a wheelchair or have some other disability, all the normal things the rest of us take for granted are likely very frustrating. Story 24. I was in church for a youth service when I was around 10 years old. They were passing around the offering bowl and I put $5 in. The guy next to me spilled the entire bowl. I helped him pick up all the money and put it back. As it was being passed away, the sermon continued, and I found $2 on the ground. I tried to wave down the bowl, but they didn't see me. I looked around to see if anyone could help, but no one seemed to be paying attention, and I didn't want to interrupt the sermon, so I slid the money into my pocket. I figured I would toss it in the bowl afterward if I saw it or just put it in next week. Even in the worst-case scenario, if somehow I didn't get it back, I would have given a net $3. After the sermon, we went to smaller groups and I was pulled aside by my group leader, an adult. He said he saw me look around to make sure no one was watching and then put the money in my pocket. I tried to explain to him that I was not stealing, but he was basically not having it, claiming he saw me with his own eyes. The head pastor noticed us talking and that I was getting upset, and I started crying as he walked over. At that point, I felt I was going to be branded as a thief, and they would probably call my parents. The group leader told the pastor about my supposed stealing, and the pastor turned to me. I rambled about what actually happened through tears, knowing he might not believe me. That pastor turned around and confronted the group leader, basically asking how dare he harass me. The pastor believed me. The pastor apologized, and I asked if I could give him the $2, to which he said sure and reassured me that I had done nothing wrong. Since then, I have strongly sided with the accused in most ambiguous situations because I remember how it felt when the pastor gave me a chance. As I got older, I understood the group leader's point of view. From his perspective, he was certain I had stolen since he had only seen part of the picture. He probably still thinks I stole it to this day. I know I need to consider that I may not have all the necessary information, even when I think I do. Sometimes a piece of the picture looks an awful lot like a complete picture. We see this all the time in the news. A few years ago, a man was demonized everywhere for being caught on camera stealing a child's ball at a baseball game. It turned out that he had earlier given that same child a ball and had even given away the very ball he was accused of stealing. Everyone who was sitting around him came out publicly, saying he was one of the nicest people at the game and was helping children get baseballs. That one pastor's actions that day changed the way I see the world. Story 25. Anyone who becomes a personal trainer will realize why people are undertrained and overweight as a whole. Everyone thinks they are a health and fitness expert, despite knowing nothing about it. Story 26. The microchip not only eventually changed the way we see the world, but it actually changed the world, literally. Story 27. Nothing that people do is their fault. We are all products of our environments and how we were raised, and by whom we were raised. Even some of the most disturbed and heinous people deserve kindness. That, or they should just be put down. However, no problems are solved only by spreading more pain. To move forward as a society, we must understand each other deeply as individuals and from a place of love. This is the way. Story 28. Nothing looks good until it is finished. It made me stop being such a perfectionist and beating myself up when things didn't look right. Then I learned from watching this old man working on a hobby project. He just did a bit of it over time, whereas I would work myself until I burned out. So now for big projects, I work a piece at a time, adjusting, thinking, and then relaxing. Story 29. A severely disabled little boy smiled at me. In the past, upon seeing a child with such significant medical problems, I would have thought, what a shame. What kind of life is that? Is that even worth living? Maybe a different outcome would have been better. Then he smiled when I said his name. He has value. Every child like him has value. They are loved, and they love, and they can make your heart soar with just a smile. Story 30. Me proving myself to be correct, which makes it worse because ignorance can be bliss. However, one might think I am insane for trusting someone who clearly does not or did not trust me. Yet how do you really earn trust with someone unless it is like this? Story 31. Being a very determined and detail-oriented manager, I have now become the manager who also closely oversees tasks. Currently, all my employees only need to adhere to the dress code and avoid receiving complaints while completing their work. Nothing else matters. Just perform the tasks and try to enjoy the process. Story 32. On self-reflection, I realized that because I am inherently who I am, even if my memories were wiped, I would recreate the kind of person I am. Thus, if I ever have amnesia, I will still be the kind of person I am, and memories being suppressed upon each new incarnation is not as bad as it seems. Story 33. People share life stories. People often say they do not really care about a person's past, but for me, it is interesting. I constantly meet new people due to work or even when I go out. They always tell me about their background, where they are from, and where they grew up. They share what they did after school, the jobs they have held, and so on. Many of them have exciting, crazy, and even sad stories. I often think about where I was when those events happened, along with the time and date. Story 34. 2 episodes of Black Lagoon transformed me from pro-life to pro-choice in such a rapid manner that describing it as whiplash would be an understatement. Story 35. Don't follow sheep. Critical thinking. Don't judge people, you have never been in their shoes. Make yourself happy. Nobody else can. Story 36. Taking mushrooms was the best day of my life. It changed my perspective on how I view nature and other people. Even though I still dislike people, I do not dislike them as much as I used to. Unless you are a truly terrible person with awful behavior and racist views, I still have strong negative feelings towards you. Story 37. One small thing that completely changed the way I see the world was when I realized how much power our perspective has over our reality. It sounds simple, but it wasn't until I had a tough period in my life where everything felt overwhelming that I understood how our mindset shapes everything. I used to think that my circumstances were what defined me, but when I started practicing gratitude and trying to shift my focus to the positive things, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, the same situations that once felt like burdens now felt more like opportunities to grow. It didn't happen overnight, but making small, conscious changes to how I view things completely shifted my experience of life. I started to see the beauty in everyday moments, in conversations with strangers, and in challenges that once seemed insurmountable. It made me realize that we have so much control over our lives, not in the sense of controlling everything that happens, but in how we respond to it. The small things, like a kind word from a stranger or a moment of stillness in nature, reminded me that perspective is a powerful thing. For anyone reading this, what is one small thing that made you rethink how you see the world? How did it shift your perspective? Story 38. I found out a very interesting fact about a group of people that completely improved my experience living with them. Story 39. It was a bit of a rabbit hole, but the movie Transcendence, featuring Johnny Depp, sparked my curiosity about the concept of an artificial intelligence-developed city. After watching that film, I went on to a video sharing platform to see if there were any computer-run city skyline simulations focused on different optimizations. I didn't find any, but I did come across City Planner Plays and Donoteat01, also known as Justin Rosniak, from the podcast Well, There's Your Problem, who created videos discussing the politics of city planning and liberalism. This led me to strong towns and not just bikes, which ignited my interest in urbanism and walkable cities and towns. Story 40. I will say it is shocking how a restraining order can be granted towards men who are much stronger and can defend themselves against a small, petite 120-pound woman who has never threatened them. Story 41. I have posted this before, but a few years ago, I was impatiently waiting in line at a big box store to buy some food during my lunch break when I noticed the little girl in the cart in front of me. I saw that we shared the same coloring and hairstyle, and that she was copying my grumpy face and the way I had my arms crossed. She noticed me noticing and got embarrassed until she saw that I was now smiling. We silently copied each other's movements and facial expressions until her mother finished checking out their groceries, and it was my turn. No one noticed our little game but us. I don't mind waiting in line anymore. I think of my little follow-the-leader mime friend and hope she is doing well. She reminded me to be a good example and that it doesn't take much to change someone's mood with kindness. Story 42. The fact that people with a penis as small as Trump's can actually exist helped explain why the world is as messed up as it is. Story 43. I had to start walking with a cane at the age of 23 due to a degenerative joint disorder combined with a knee injury. You see very quickly how strangers and even people you know change towards you, for worse and for better. Story 44. A migraine. I have had them before and they would go away. Then I got one for a week, and I literally cannot see the world the same way out of my left eye. Story 45. Killing bugs reminded me of how quickly life can end. 1 second you are walking around looking for food or shelter, the next you are just a lifeless mark on the ground. Story 46. Working at the front desk of a decent hotel in the area can be challenging. Guests often direct their frustrations at you for issues beyond your control. I do not choose the television channel lineup, set the prices, create the no pet policy, manage housekeeping or maintenance, or handle the breakfast area. Please do not take your frustrations out on me because of these matters. This experience has taught me that the person you see at the front desk usually has very little influence over your overall experience, so remember to treat them with respect. Story 47. Reading books. Starting in 6th grade, I hated reading books. I thought reading was a boring and useless habit. But now I regret it. When I was in 7th grade, I switched to my dream school where I prepared for 1 year. I faced a big problem. I had poor writing and speaking skills because of my limited vocabulary. Therefore, to solve this problem, I tried to read more. Now I speak without a barrier, not only when I pass speaking exams. Additionally, it helps me talk with my new classmates, especially with girls. Although it changed my perspective on others and my whole life. Thank you, books. Story 48. Waste. I noticed so many people suggesting to just buy new instead of fixing things. The amount of items that go into our landfills is insane. Not only that, but we spend beyond our means. Story 49. How many people do I check into hospital visits that answer, "I'm good," to the question, "How are you?" I know they aren't fine, mainly because I see the doctor's notes of why they are there. It made me realize how much we mask our feelings as a society. Story 50. It has changed a few times, but the most recent drastic change was when I became a parent. I was holding my little one and realized that all of us are precious in this way. Becoming a parent has changed how I understand myself, my parents, and my relationship with them, and it has changed how I see people. It has been a spiritual experience for me as well. I was a religious person before, but now I see us all differently through that same lens. Story 51. Being alone on a beach in the middle of the night is a unique experience. Try it sometime. It made me feel so tiny, and it really made me sense that there is something so much bigger than us. Hanging out in total darkness and just watching the waves crash is oddly invigorating, and it makes you feel like you are the only person on earth for a moment. Story 52. I picked up meditation almost 2 years ago, and it slowly shattered my reality and biases. It threw me into an existential crisis about what I should be making of my life, even though I have a well-paying job and enough hobbies. The only thing that has helped me ground myself is living for others, helping others to heal and grow and extending compassion and empathy to everyone. Story 53. In 2022 and 2023, I was assaulted and then entered a domestic violence relationship. I was working a small part-time job to try to escape, but it seemed like there was no light at the end of the tunnel for me. One day, I just decided to end it all. The next day, the day it was supposed to happen, a lady walked in wearing a hat with a pin that her daughter, who is younger than me, made for her. It was just a bobby pin with 3 beads on it. She grabbed her snacks and walked into my line. We started talking, and I slipped up and said, "Yeah, just a rough day, you know?" She took the pin off her hat, handed it to me, and said, "You look like you need this more than I do. You also look like you'd give it a lot more love than I could." I put it on my hat, and she looked at me with the eyes of someone who knew what I was going through and understood the pain of it. It made me think of my younger siblings. If I left, they'd have no one else. I'm glad I stayed. Our mom passed away last year, and I'm the only thing they have left of her. Story 54. Realizing just how greedy, unfulfilled, and authoritarian a large fraction of the current human species are, especially powerful individuals, can significantly enhance your life. Story 55. In 2001, I was on a boat in Greece between Athens and Rhodes. I was up on the deck when an old man came to talk to me and the other people I was sitting with. We talked about where we all came from, and he said that the world depended too much on having division, mainly created by the invention of countries and nationalities. In reality, we were all one human race, and nothing else mattered. The conversation became really profound, and after about half an hour, he got up and started pacing the lengths of the ship up and down. We didn't engage again. Here I am in 2025 still wondering who he was, where he came from, and if he is still alive. I have never forgotten that conversation, and I imagine it will stay with me for the rest of my life. Story 56. I had a major seizure because of a drug overdose and passed out. I can't remember much, but 30 minutes I was unconscious felt like eternity, and not in a bad way. There was just bright light everywhere and voices that seemed familiar. I had whole conversations and I saw parts of my life and the people I really loved. Then one of the voices said that I have to go now. I didn't want to go because it felt so good. Then I woke up in the ambulance. This changed my view on life and the world. Story 57. Doctors, honestly, I never thought I would see the day where I had to argue with doctors about how I feed my children. My youngest, my only biological child, has a fast metabolism. I am literally the only person on either side of her genetics that does not have a fast metabolism. Her doctor kept looking at her as if she was not getting fed. The problem with that is my youngest out eats me. For reference, I weigh 230 pounds and eat large portions because I work a lot and do not have time to eat at work during my 12-hour shifts at a factory. My youngest will, on average, eat 2 to 3 times the amount I do. Story 58. I remember the precise moment I understood the permanence of death. I was 4, nearly 5. I was riding my tricycle in the driveway, and my mother warned me not to pedal into the road. It hit me that it would be so easy to pedal into the road. Nothing would or could stop me. There was no baby guardrail set up at the end of the driveway, and if I ended up in the road, a car could hit me, and if it hit me, I would die. Until that moment, I thought I understood death. It was simple, you stop being alive, but it hadn't hit me emotionally yet. At that moment, it suddenly did. I realized someday my parents would die, and so would I, and that when my parents died, I would be alone. An existential dread came over me, and my innocence was forever lost. I remember frantically trying to get my mother to tell me I was wrong about death being forever, but she calmly confirmed what I now knew. I could tell she did not think I could possibly understand at that age because she was treating it like it was no big deal. But inside, my world was shattered, and I was terrified. I had realized that everything ends, that nothing is forever, that security is not guaranteed. Felt like a trapdoor had opened beneath me. The next time I got that feeling was when I was old enough that certain adults started treating me poorly. I realized that I was not a baby that every adult thought was cute and wanted to be nice to and take care of anymore. I was a boy that people assumed certain things about, and boys were naughty and a nuisance. Another layer of my security was gone. I knew then that not all adults were benevolent and had my best interest at heart, that bad things could befall me, and people could assume things about me that were untrue based on how I appeared. After that, I had more such epiphanies about government, law enforcement, and humanity itself. You just get more and more jaded as you learn. Story 59. Seeing how nasty people can be towards customer service workers for no reason at all. What is wrong with you? Story 60. I am not going to type that word. 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 Story 61. Getting abused by someone I loved completely altered my perception of relationships and trust in general. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.